Today, I'm going to be ranking the top 10 female competitors who also happen to be queer from MTV's The Challenge. They'll be ranked based on two criteria: their performance track record and their most memorable moments. Basically, how memorable are they as characters to the franchise, and how much winning did they do? I'm Amanda, this is my Really Gay YouTube channel, and this is one of my favorite shows of all time, so I'm really stoked. Let's get started. Slipping in at the last spot on my list is challenge legend Anissa Ferreira. At times, I took her off the list, then put her back on, then switched her with Ruthie, then took her off. I just went back and forth a lot on Anissa. If you just look at her stats, you might think I'm insane, because they're pretty bad. After competing on 14 total seasons, she has a 10-11 elimination record. Basically, anytime she goes in, there's a 50% chance she's gonna lose. But with 30 daily challenge wins and the respect Anissa's gotten from MTV over the last few years, with them finally giving credit for being such a trailblazer and giving her more screen time and her own podcast with her best friend Tori, Anissa deserves a little bit of recognition. She made it to the finals on Gauntlet 2 and the Duel 2. Also, honorable mention for her finishing this recent All-Stars final after coming into the season probably in what was the worst shape of her challenge career. Anissa has been attacked by multiple ignorant cast members over the years for her mixed race and bisexuality, with her famously calling out Robin and referring to her as a disgrace to women when Robin asserted that she couldn't pick a team. Shout out to all the bi people watching this right now. Your sexual orientation is valid. Most memorable moment or character trait. Anissa has so many memorable moments, but if I have to pick one, it's obviously "I will cut you with words," one of the greatest challenge quotes of all times.
I don't need a gauntlet. I will cut you with words.
And she did it with a white man standing behind her, mocking her the entire time. Number 9, Nicole Zanata. Considered by fans to be one of the dumbest players of all time, Nicole makes this list as much for her personality as she does her six-pack and athletic prowess. Before you start to come for me for calling her dumb, remember her and Corey and Triangle Gate? I will never forget them starting to look for triangles in the description of the text describing the game. Like, no, they can't be this dumb. They couldn't figure it out. Also, before you come for me for laughing too hard at that, Nicole is just as notorious for treating women bad as she is for being dumb.
Laurel doesn't know I wasn't faithful the entire time. I mean, I around. What a piece of
Nicole is one of those lesbians who takes all of her cues on women from toxic misogynists. But there's no doubt Nicole is a physical threat, with her highest finish being 3rd place on Invasions, and what I would have to assume would be a similar finish on Vendettas if she hadn't been medically DQ'd. I have to acknowledge she's a powerful player, whose stats have been greatly affected by injury. She DQ'd out of the last challenge she was on, along with like half the rest of the cast when they were doing that stupid truck wrestling challenge. Like, I don't know what they're thinking. I don't know why. It's not fun for the fans to watch half the cast go down due to injury. Like, oh, here's a new challenge. Well, we're gonna launch you into a wall of concrete. Most memorable moment or character trait: her New York accented obsession with peanut butter. Number 8, Jen Grijalva. I apologize, Jen comes from an era of the show where they didn't say any of their last names ever. Jen, who famously engaged in a rousing match of doesn't she love Rachel during a couple different seasons of the show, is a somewhat polarizing cast member when it comes to the fans. Unlike Nicole, Jen is old school enough that she comes from a real world season people actually watched, so we got to see her character develop from when she was in Denver all the way throughout her various seasons. My personal bias almost kept Jen off this list entirely. To be honest, I never considered her a great or even good player, to the point that I was actually shocked when I did a pandemic rewatch and realized she'd gotten 2 3rd place finishes and a final 4th place finish. Outside of her 2 3rd place finishes and her 5-3 elimination record, Jen was one of the most memorable players while she was on the show. She certainly didn't come up with the rookies mantra, but she definitely perfected yelling it at them when they didn't immediately cater to the wishes of the vets. I remember her as a kind of Mighty Mouse type character, always puffing her chest up, trying to make herself seem tougher than she actually was. Most memorable moment or character trait has got to be Jen's fiery temper. Her go-to move was to ratchet up that raspy voice and scream at the top of her lungs over whoever was trying to talk to her. At the time, I thoroughly hated it, but watching it back all these years later, I kind of have an appreciation for the type of drama she brought, especially compared to a lot of these modern characters who, like, let's face it, are wallpaper. Speaking of wallpaper, perfect transition into number 7, Casey Clark. Casey's really the only player on this list that comes from what I think of as the modern era of the challenge. It's kind of a miracle that Casey just finished competing on her 3rd season of the show, considering how utterly boring she was on the first 2 seasons. I've seen people on the challenge subreddit refer to Casey as lesbian eye candy, and I completely agree. I'd say out of all the OG competitors, Casey reminds me the most of Rachel Robinson. She wants to stay out of the drama, but she finds herself squarely entrenched in it because of romantic entanglements. Rachel was like lesbian Kenny back in the day. All the female castmates seemed kind of in awe of her, and there was always something going on with her and Veronica, her and Anissa, her and Jen. It was always her and somebody. And that kind of drama is, fortunately for us fans, no stranger to Casey. I'm of course speaking of Casey's relationship with Nany. And if you haven't been sipping the challenge tea lately, Casey and Nany have been running all around on social media, kissing and snuggling and acting like a couple. Meanwhile, Casey's ex Taylor has totally blasted the shit out of her, accusing her of basically cheating on her with Nany and doing all kinds of inappropriate stuff. With a perfect 2-0 elimination record and 8 daily challenge wins, surely Casey's 2nd place finish is not her peak for the show. Number 6, Veronica Portillo. If Jen was polarizing, Veronica is like the queen of polar. Widely considered an OG boss-ass for years by fans, they recently turned on her when she came for Arissa during the All-Stars season on Instagram. She was giving Arissa crap about quitting, which sounds very Veronica. Good to know she hasn't changed a bit. And the fans turned on her. They started pointing out how she stood by during Tanya's sexual assault and all kinds of other problematic she's done. She's definitely a perfect example of somebody whose past kind of made her the cool girl, but now makes her like the problematic girl. I remember watching The Real L Word for the first time last year when the pandemic hit, and seeing Veronica walk out of the same lesbian bar Rose was just in. My eyes almost burst out of their sockets. I immediately wanted to DM Rose and asked if she'd hooked up with Veronica, but I realized she'd probably just block me. I think a lot of people forget, or maybe they just aren't aware because she is from the old school seasons, but Veronica has won 3 times. She won the Challenge 2000, the Gauntlet, and the Inferno. In addition, she made the final with her team, the Badasses, on Inferno 2. Veronica didn't get all those wins because they used to hand out W's the way they hand out ridiculousness reruns these days. She got them because she's a political powerhouse. Most memorable moment or character trait. 1, her hot tub threesome with Rachel and Abe, which has gotta be one of the most memorable, if not the most memorable sex scene in the history of the show. And 2, her dangling high up in mid-air, screaming at the top of her lungs while Julie attempts to f with her safety harness. Number 5, Cara Maria Sorbello. It's tough ranking Cara this high, not because she doesn't deserve it, but more so because Cara's just messy. She comes on insecure, not great at dailies or eliminations. In basically her first couple of seasons, her storyline is to be picked on by the cool kids in the house for things like she looks weird. Indeed, if you want to go back to that glorious time in our society when girls would state out loud that their sole dislike of a person was because of their appearance, check out Cara Maria's first couple seasons of the show. But that was not to be Cara's only or final storyline. When she was paired with Laurel for a Rivals season, we watched as they both blossomed. Cara finally finding some confidence, and Laurel finally finding a shred of empathy, albeit using it to utterly and absolutely destroy the essence of Paula that season, but still, she found some empathy. After that season, their friendship fell by the wayside, but Cara's confidence seemed to stick around for a while. She got really good at eliminations, ending her last season with a 13-6 record and 48 daily challenge wins. Before MTV quietly showed us the kinda maybe footage of Jenny winning over Johnny Bananas in Total Madness, Cara was the first female to ever win a solo final by herself, beating all the other guys. Cara has 2 total wins and 9 finals appearances. That is insane. The only female challenger who even comes remotely close to that is Paula, and she's only got 5 finals appearances. Cara's star has faded a considerable amount over the last few years, or as some might put it, since the day she met Pauly. Her behavior has gotten more and more bizarre. When her and Pauly did that fake breakup thing, I honestly didn't know if she would ever recover from it. But all in all, Cara Maria is a complete and total all-star of the challenge. Most memorable moment or character trait? I want to say forcing Pauly to get that tattoo of her on How Far Is Tattoo Far? Greatest show name ever, by the way. But that wasn't the challenge, so I don't think that counts. I'm gonna go with her solo win on Vendetta. Coming in at number 4, Emily Schramm. Few competitors can show up to their very first season and scare the shit out of their fellow competitors the way Emily did when she showed up on Cutthroat. From the moment she entered the show, the other women in the cast were terrified of going against her in elimination. Why? Because Emily is a physical specimen. While Emily only has 1 win compared to, say, Cara Maria's 2, Emily only competed on 3 seasons compared to somebody like Cara who competed on 14. If Emily competes on even half as many seasons as Cara Maria, she's getting just as many wins, probably more.
But Amanda, Cara was such a bigger name than Emily. I mean, she was the face of the show for a while.
This is all true, but I wanted this list to be about queer women who dominated. And while Cara Maria certainly dominated when it comes to the star department, after watching them together on Cutthroat, I just couldn't put Cara Maria above Emily. Emily's never lost a single elimination at 5-0. Cara Maria has lost like 6. Most memorable moment or character trait? Unfortunately for her, Emily's most memorable moment on the show comes in the form of a giant lesson on racism. While competing on her 2nd season of the show, Battle of the Exes, Emily and Camilla decided to dress up like their partners in an attempt to look like Ty. Emily smeared chocolate all over her face and subsequently said that she didn't understand the history behind it, the racism behind it, and what it meant. Regardless of whether that was true or not, how can you go to a public college and not know about blackface? The incident hasn't stuck with her or tarnished her, and the fan base continues to herald her as one of the greatest athletes to ever play the show. Number 3, Rachel Robinson. She competes like a man. Those are the paraphrased words of Rachel's good friend, Mark Long. Makes sense. Most of the guys on this show historically viewed women as worthless competitors, so when a superior athlete like Rachel comes along, of course they have to reinforce their already present views that women suck by saying, oh, she plays like a dude. Rachel absolutely perfected the 2000s lesbian bob haircut throughout her time on the show. If Casey is today's Shane of the show, no doubt Rachel was the OG Shane of the show. She was consistently getting women to fall in love with her. I'll never forget on The Duel 2 how tore up Anissa was over their relationship. Meanwhile, Rachel couldn't be bothered. She was too busy hooking up with Jen. She played 7 total seasons and won twice. Here's the really fun stat. Out of 43 total dailies she competed in, she won 23 of them. That is insane. That means if Rachel is competing in a daily challenge, she has a 50% chance of winning it. Her elimination record is frankly a joke. It's 1-2, but I know at least one of those losses comes from when she was paired with Anissa. And frankly, she didn't get a chance to compete in that many eliminations because all the other women on the show were terrified to go in against her, and because she was so good politically. Most memorable moment or character trait, again, definitely the hot tub scene with her, Veronica, and Abe. Takes the cake. Sorry. Number 2, Laurel Stuckey. If this was strictly a personality thing, I think Laurel would take the top spot. But it's also a competitor thing. And Laurel is a super imperfect competitor, which is one of the things I like about her. Laurel dominates in eliminations with a 9-2 record that some people still question to this day. Her loss versus Ninja was a technicality to at least half of the fan base. Regardless, the point is, if you go into elimination against Laurel, you're probably losing. While a lot of the other people on this list stand out on the stats sheet, Laurel is one of those players that stands out in real time. She's scary looking, towering over all the other women, and not in a skinny, tall beanpole sort of way. In a, if she twitches her thigh, it might bounce one of the other chicks off sort of way. Even though she only has one win, I don't foresee a lot of people coming for me for putting her in the 2 spot, because when you think of the words dominating and the challenge, Laurel comes to mind. She's one of those players that talks a lot but backs up the talk. Very similar to Jordan, which is why she's so much freaking fun to watch on our television screen. Ultimately, Laurel is a type of player who refuses to quit. She has more heart than any of the other people I put on this list. And if you don't think she has heart, just rewatch that clip of her ripping the out of Zach on the side of a mountain while he out, and she gives him a taste of his own, "You're a and you're about to lose this for me" medicine. It is one of the most glorious moments of the whole show. Anybody watching this who cares about queer women knows exactly why I'm saying Zach. It was one of the greatest tragedies ever that we never got to see a Laurel Evelyn elimination. Let's just hope we get to see some future baller eliminations from her. Most memorable moment or character trait? That would be the famous Laurel Suck It chop she engaged in her elimination loss to Ninja, where she had the most wide-eyed, crazy, creepy look I've ever seen anyone have. It was just the most glorious display of athletic ego I have ever seen in my life. It absolutely cemented her as a legend on the show, and it was one of the most exciting moments on the show. Too bad it happened in like episode 3 and the whole rest of that season was trash, but I'm still glad we got that moment. Coming in at number 1, the goddess queen of all challenge lesbians. That's right, you know who it is. Evelyn Smith. Evelyn's tied with Veronica for the most wins as far as women on this list at 3 wins. But let's be serious, Evelyn's middle of the show wins and Veronica's early wins are not the same. Evelyn's career daily wins are at 50%, winning 25 total dailies. Her elimination record is 6-3, but like Rachel, some of those losses come with asterisks. In one of the losses, she was partnered with notoriously horrible player Danny in an exile. In another loss, she threw the elimination so that her best friend Kellyanne could stay in the game. Evelyn didn't just dominate on the court. She dominated in the hat department. I'm not sure, but I'm pretty positive Evelyn is single-handedly responsible for the 2000s visor obsession our nation engaged in back in the day. On top of that, she had some epic hookups and makeout sessions. Does anybody else remember the Titanic-style whirlwind romance that was Brooke and Evelyn during Gauntlet 3? By far, the best part is when Brooke gets eliminated and Evelyn ugly cries like a soldier about to leave his wife behind, only to zoom out and show the entire rest of the cast's confusion, with Coral adding the glorious line, "I don't even think Brooke's a real lesbian." This is just challenge gold. Challenge lesbian gold. Most memorable moment or character trait? Evelyn's win on the island cemented her as a dominating player, but her speech on the island to Johnny Bananas and the rest of the douchebag alliance is what cemented her as one of the greatest reality TV characters. Tonight, I want to say to you guys,
you, your alliance.
Oh, it was just, because you have to realize at that time, Nobody liked Bananas and the Power Alliance. I remember watching the shows back when those were coming on. I don't know if I was in high school or college, but I was pretty young. But I remember live the feeling watching them being like, I am so sick of the same popular kids winning over and over and over. So when Evelyn stood up and said that, it was like she was standing up for everyone who wasn't a part of the popular group. Which, newsflash, most of us weren't a part of the popular group. So like, it's like Revenge of the Nerds or something. I don't know. It was just like this glorious moment. Some people think that moment's tainted because she ended up joining them later on to win. But all I heard just now was that she won. Ultimately, what makes every single one of these ladies on this list a baller is their ability to compete and their ability to make great TV. So that's my list. Let me know who I have too high, who I have too low, who I left off that should have been on. Shout out to the Star Creature for suggesting I make this video. I probably would have never done it if you hadn't suggested it, so this was like the funnest video I've done in a while. Right, if this video does well, I would love to do future queer challenge videos. I've also recently started watching Survivor. Thanks for supporting, thanks for watching. I'll see you next video.